That was a really interesting chart and see people's viewpoints on the future is plant-based. Let's see. Hopefully, my brief overview would help you change otherwise. And Ryan, I can't share my screen. Okay, there I go. And can you all see this? Hey, wonderful. So thank you for the introduction, Ryan. And thank you for inviting me to be part of the EIT and Demo Day. So great to be here. So hi, everyone. My name is Ahmed Khan, and I'm the founder and editor of CellAgri, a news and market insights platform exploring the future of food with cell agriculture. To give a brief overview, CellAgri tracks and promotes all the different players in the field, and we share all our insights about the future of food with cell agriculture with our subscribers through our regular newsletter. One of CellAgri's goals is to become a homepage for the field where people can come to learn anything and everything about cell agriculture, from what it is to who is involved, and the latest market insights and opportunities in the field. To get started, I want to give a brief overview about cell agriculture as well as the European investment landscape and the emerging opportunities in the ecosystem in Europe for founders, investors, and even corporates to get involved in. I don't want to take too long here, but I want to give a brief overview of what is cell agriculture to those who are new to the field and how we can build a new food system that can be better for everyone with that technology. So cell agriculture is the field of producing animal products like meat, dairy, and leather directly from cell cultures instead of raising animals to produce the same products. Compared to conventional animal agriculture, cell agriculture provides a more sustainable and environmentally friendly way to produce the exact same products to meet the growing demand for animal products like meat, excuse the pun. And typically when people talk about cell agriculture, they break down the benefits into three categories usually: the environmental implications, public health, animal welfare. But in light of the devastating impact of COVID-19 around the world, I also want to highlight the food security aspects of cell agriculture and alt proteins overall. COVID-19 has highlighted the needs for resilience in our food supply chains to ensure people all over the world do not lack access and availability to their food needs. And cell agriculture can help address that by being a way to locally produce food anywhere and everywhere on the planet and even in space. Food security has not really been a topic of conversation yet in the US or Canada or even in Europe until the pandemic, but food security has actually been one of the major reasons why there is an explosion of interest in cell agriculture in Asia, particularly in Singapore, Japan, and across the Middle East. Without requiring as many resources like land or water, countries that rely heavily on food imports could now produce enough food for their own populations locally, and that's due to cell agriculture and other alternative protein technologies. When I first began tracking the field a few years ago, you could count the number of players in cell agriculture ecosystem on your fingers, especially when it came to Europe. Today, the field has exploded globally, and there are players all over the world making the future of food with cell agriculture. The pictures shown here are from players and companies and product showcases from different players across Europe, from Mosa Meat's cell-based burger to higher steaks, bacon, and pork belly, to even piece of meat's cultured fat nugget hybrid. Companies all around Europe are doing fantastic work. I also want to touch on companies like Cellular Revolution that are working to provide services and products to support the emerging cellular agriculture supply chain. We will need more players to support the entire ecosystem to continue growing it, especially in Europe. And while it's great to see the increase in number of players in Europe, it's important to recognize that most of these new players is mostly possible due to the growing number of investments in the field. So as of July 2020, more than $1 billion has been invested into cell agriculture companies around the world focusing on food. And while this is an incredible landmark for the field, the global increase in funding is not necessarily reflected in the European investment landscape just yet. With approximately $56 million invested over 3 years, only 5% of global investments in cell agriculture food companies has taken place in Europe. To break that down a bit further, in 2020 alone, there's been almost $500 million of investments globally in cell agriculture, and only about 11 million of that has happened in disclosed funding in Europe. And while the total investment numbers do lag behind North America and Europe and Asian investments when it comes to deal count and total invested, this does highlight that cell agriculture is still in its early stages in Europe, and there's a tremendous opportunity for growth for the field here. I also do want to note that most of the investments in 2019 in Europe took place during the second half, took place mostly in the fourth quarter of 2019. So if the same number of deals and investments do happen in 2020, this year could match, if not go above what the field achieved in 2019. So with the global growth of the field, what exactly are the opportunities to grow agriculture in Europe in general? European scientists and founders have played a big role in helping get the ecosystem where it is today, but there's more to be done in Europe to make the continent a leader for our future food system. Considering the current state of the agriculture industry, we highlighted 3 areas and opportunities that can make Europe a leader in the emerging field for the future. Outside of Europe, it's been challenging for agriculture startups to receive government support in terms of grants and funding. From governments like the UK and Belgium giving grants to startups in their countries, to programs like Eurostars that gave 3 million euros to Dutch startup Meetable, a number of startups have received funding from government agencies in Europe, and their continuing support for European startups is going to be critical to grow and develop a whole ecosystem around agriculture on the continent. The EIT Food Accelerator Network is also a promising way to show that the EU is committed to growing and supporting startups in the alternative protein space. And along with government support, it's important to recognize that the first cell agriculture products coming to market may be hybrids or blends with plant-based meats or ingredients. And considering all the innovation happening in Europe in the plant-based food space, this is a great opportunity to explore how cell-cultured products, from cell-cultured fats and dairy all the way to cell-grown meat itself, can complement plant-based products to make an alternative protein product that has the exact same taste, texture, and flavor as its conventional counterpart. This can lead to opportunities for European companies to create a whole new range of food products that we haven't seen before and offer consumers even another option for their sustainable meals. I also want to touch on the role that corporates can play in the future of food with cell agriculture and further growth through partnerships. Supply chain development is critical for the cell agriculture field's success, and partnerships with established players in the food, agriculture, and even pharmaceutical industries can help support the field's growth while finding their own footing in the nascent industry. As the years progress, we will see more conventional agriculture, meat, and even pharmaceutical players explore how they can apply their expertise into the cell agriculture supply chain, as well as the overall alternative protein supply chains. Not only will this help new startups in the alternative protein space, it'll make sure that these corporations continue to play a role in the future of food and future food supply chains. It may even present opportunities for pharmaceutical and even biotech players to even enter the food supply chain in the first place. So there's still many hurdles for the field to overcome to scale, and partnerships with established industry players may help cell agriculture companies overcome them. Well, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this brief presentation to hear about the European landscape and the opportunities to build it. As you can see, the cell agriculture field has grown tremendously over the last few years. And interestingly, most of that may not have been possible without European players to begin with. It was in 2013 in London when Dutch scientist Dr. Marc Coloma showcased the first ever cell-cultured meat burger. In an audience full of journalists and the media, the world saw for the first time the first cultured meat burger being showcased and tasted. And since then, the field has exploded in interest globally. If it wasn't for that first taste test on a global platform like London, would the field have grown tremendously as it has in the last few years? It's hard to say, but presenting in London, a leading global and European hub, definitely has played its role. And thank you all again for taking the time to listen. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions about cell agriculture or interested in learning more about the different services and resources that CellAgri offers. We do have an upcoming report series taking a look at the investment breakdown globally, as well as upcoming opportunities in the field. And you can scan the QR code to learn more about that. I'm going to pass the floor back to Ryan, and thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, Ahmed. Yeah, some great insights. And as everyone sees in the Zoom chat, I've posted a link where you can go on to Slido once more and start putting your questions and capturing your questions there so we can pull them in for Ahmed. And now I'm going to hand over to Marc, so also capture them there for Marc as well. Over to you, Marc.
Great, perfect. Can you hear me well? Can you hear me well?
Yes, and we see your screen.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Everything working?
Yeah, looks good. Nice
Great.
and yellow.
Perfect. So I will talk a little bit about the perspective of plant-based industry, but from Heura lens, and which do we think that are main challenges that the industry face. Something important, who am I? I'm Marc Coloma, co-founder and CEO of Heura Foods. We are a mission-driven company. We come from an activism background, so our mission is to empower people to make a positive change into the world and also accelerate a protein transition. And we have two hows. As we come from activism, we want to raise consciousness and we create a lot of content in order to raise awareness about the problem of livestock. And we believe that technology is a way to make obsolete problems through solutions. And that's why we invest a lot in food technology. So things that you should know and are driving the hype in this segment. This is really important key data about the growth and the importance that this category is having and will have. But also we have to be conscious that the meat industry, it's 1.5 trillion industry, and we have a long way to go. It's amazing to see so much innovation, but there are a lot of advancement to be done in the market in order to make it mainstream. I will make my presentation short in order to allow you to make any questions. So what I think that are the most important challenge in the plant-based meat industry. At the end, the first challenge, and I think that the one that the industry has overcome, is the sensorial challenge. People want to eat products that they want to eat every day. And I think that the products out there are getting better and better in order to create a great sensorial experience. So I think that one of the next challenges of the category is that we can eat them every day, that any nutritionist will recommend plant-based products to be incorporated in every day's diet. And I think that this is a main issue in order to make these products not meat alternatives, but meat successors. And I think that the biggest challenge is that we can buy these products every day and how we can make innovations that allow to get price parity with meat or even below. So it's amazing, pioneers like Beyond Meat or Impossible, how they tackle this challenge. They focus in creating an amazing sensorial experience, creating all the systems in bindings, proteins, aroma, etc. And it has been an amazing advance for the industry in order to get to higher audiences. The point that where I think that we are right now, and it will be a catalyzer in order to make more consumers going into the category, it's this second generation of products that we want to push, not saying to anyone that they are doing a bad job, that we can do better as an industry, is match the sensorial experience with good nutrition. And there are a lot of challenges. For example, having a more diverse botanic origins because consumers want diversity. But one of the challenges that we have been focusing on, and in October we will present a breakthrough innovation worldwide in the industry, is juiciness. How we can create healthy juiciness in these products. And there, all the platforms about fat analogs will be really, really important. And stay tuned because we will present an amazing news there. But the most important thing I think about plant-based meats is that there are a lot of different roads that we can take into create a product, and there are endless possibilities to keep improving over and over, thing that doesn't happen with the meat industry. And an interesting point that I think that will raise a lot of noise in the following months is the connection between culture needs, but culture in also plant-based industry. Impossible has been using this technology in order to solve better the aroma and the color transition challenge through him. But I think that this will also come to proteins as well, because the supply chains has to be created and improved a lot in order to have accessibility in PPPs, for example, for the growth of the industry, and biotechnology there, and a lot of projects that are done with mycoprotein, for example, and fungi and precision fermentation. I think that will be one of the key technologies to watch in order to get to the next challenge, the accessibility challenge, and how we create the different systems that are necessary in a plant-based meat products from different ingredient source that not only solve the sensorial and nutritional challenge, but also the accessibility challenge in price. And I think that this will be one of the main challenges to come. And it's interesting that here are also the mates of Solar Foods, how different startups are already working on that, on how to make better supply chains for different products. So that's it, the overview that I wanted to share with you, and I'll be happy to answer any question. Thank you very much.
Awesome, thanks, Marc. And I must say, Marc and myself are both based in Barcelona, and I first met Marc maybe 4 years ago, maybe a bit longer actually. And I knew a little bit about what he was doing, but I wasn't familiar with his product. And I can say, in the last 6 months, for me at least, it's exploded everywhere around Barcelona now. So everywhere I go, I see all their products, and not only do I see them, I taste them. So I'm seeing all your new products coming out. I've not told Marc this, by the way, but I'm really appreciating the products that you have out here. They're really, really tasty. And I actually had one of your burgers the other day, and it was top notch. So good work. Keep it up.
Nice.
So I'm interested to know if Marc or Ahmed have any comments or questions for each other on what you just heard from one another. You're two quite, from the plant-based side and the cell-based side, different perspectives.
Yeah, that was a great overview, Marc. Thanks for sharing that. We both hinted at this idea at the end of the idea of the role that fermentation can use almost as a hybrid between companies looking at cell agriculture products and ingredients and plant-based as well. How do you see that growing from your experience in Spain and in Europe?
It breaks down. I don't know if it happened just to me, but I couldn't hear the last part.
Okay, I guess I'll repeat that again. We both hinted at the idea of the role that fermentation can be used to make hybrid and blend products using both cell culture technology and plant-based products. Have you seen a growing interest in that from your experience in Spain and in Europe otherwise?
Yeah, I think that we have, as an industry, been super focused about how to disrupt livestock, but we will disrupt agriculture through that technology, and it can bring amazing competitive advantage that will have amazing impact for the consumers in terms of accessibility, but also in terms of sustainability, because we will come from harvesting products to culturing that, and it can happen in the same factories where you can produce the products. So I think that there will be an integration of both industries. Right now, I think that the plant-based industry has been super focused into creating systems, making possible the systems that will allow the product. But right now, I think that we will start a race to how we create better systems from the ingredients perspective, not thinking so much about food technology and how we apply food technology, but food science, how we create innovations that can disrupt different limitations that we can find in certain ingredients, or different supply chains.
That's a really great
What
answer.
do you think? What do you think about it?
I agree with you there. I think the idea of food science there is going to be a great point, is going to be really important in developing how all these different alternative proteins can come together and produce the best product possible, use out of all the different systems we're looking at right now. Back in March, one of the European companies, Piece of Meat, actually showcased a cell-cultured nugget that was about 20% cultured fat and then 80% plant-based. And it was really interesting to see that they said that using that hybrid blend helped address some of the taste and texture issues that some companies have been facing using plant proteins just alone. So it's been interesting to see how our future could be, blending all these different possibilities, not just on the meat side of alternative protein, but also other products as well, including the dairy side that we haven't really covered at all.
Yeah, and another exciting thing is like bioreactors right now can be applied, and fermentation can be applied in the next challenge in plant-based meat, but also it will be the connection with the next generation that will be cultivated meat. So it's interesting. I'm looking forward who creates the Amazon Web Service of bioreactors in order to leverage the industry and allow a lot of innovation that can make amazing breakthroughs.
Exactly. That's a really great point. Looking forward to seeing the players that emerge to address all those challenges in all supply chains, looking at the alternative protein space in future food technologies.
Awesome. We're also getting some questions in. We've got another 5-6 minutes. So one of the first questions that came was actually on, some are coming on Zoom and some are coming in on Slido. So the first one that came on Slido was, is the funding from Europe originating in Europe, or does this include funds from other regions? We are going to have an investor conversation panelist tomorrow morning as well, but do any of you have any a view on that? So is funding from Europe originating in Europe, or does it come from other regions as well?
In terms of the cell agriculture ecosystem, it's a great question. A lot of the early investors or top investors so far in the global cell agriculture ecosystem have been predominantly US and North American based. However, if we look at investors and investments in the European landscape, there have been notably quite a few more European investors focusing on European startups. That also does include some of these government agencies that have provided funding for these new novel technologies as well.
Cool. Maybe you have anything to add on that, Mark, or is that?
Well, I think that the interesting point is, well, at the end, capital is from different places, but the most important point for me is to see how traditional CPG funds or that are not even part of CPG are starting to invest in this industry. So tech funds are starting to look at it as an interesting industry. And well, Blackstone and Oatly are one of the examples, for example.
Cool. There was a comment, you probably see it, Ahmed, in the Zoom as well, on the chat. So there was a comment from Solar Foods, Dilek, asking about if you could repeat which techs are considered to be within CellAg, and single cell proteins are included in the terminology.
That's a great question. So in terms of how CellAgri has defined cell agriculture so far, it's continually evolving, but so far we define cell agriculture as an umbrella term, taking a look at both tissue engineering products such as cell cultured meat and biomaterials like leather, and fermentation that's focuses on producing, that focuses on using microorganisms to produce animal proteins like the dairy proteins, egg white proteins, and in that category so far. As more companies look at fermentation to produce alternative proteins, and they could engineer or use microbes and microorganisms to produce more specific animal proteins, then the definition of what we include for cell agriculture will definitely expand. Single cell proteins is a very exciting space, especially the work that Solar Foods is doing. So looking forward to seeing what they get up to there.
Nice. And we have a question here as well, and already a comment regarding it from Leo, but the question was, how do you overcome the need for FBS for CellAg? given the cost and environmental impact of producing FBS? And you might want to explain to some laymen as well, if there are any, what FBS is.
Yeah, sure thing. So I guess a bit of a step backwards from there. To grow meat, like cell-based meat, directly from cell cultures, the cells you're using to start with are put in a meat nutrient formulation called the cell culture media, and that contains a lot of different ingredients like vitamins, minerals, hormones, and cell culture serum, which provides lots of those components that cells need to grow and proliferate to become products like meat. So far, most scientific labs use a product called FBS, which is short for fetal bovine serum. Fetal bovine serum has many challenges when looking at for application in the cell agriculture space. For one, it's still animal derived and an animal source, and that has issues by itself in terms of it's inconsistent from batch to batch, and the whole goal of this industry was to remove animals from the supply chain. Secondly, is the cost point of that. Many early prototypes and companies looking to make cell-based meat have shared that roughly 80% of their cost so far for the early prototypes is from using FBS as a medium. As companies look to scale and move further in the production, removing FBS and coming up with an animal-free serum that is also cost-effective has been described as a holy grail for the industry because of how substantial the cost of it is so far. We have quite a few startups all over the world, including in the UK actually, that are looking to make animal-free and inexpensive FBS replacements to help companies around the world produce their meat without using it and more affordably as well. So I hope that addresses that.
Yeah, I think it was a great comment. Please feel free to add more in the Zoom, and we can always talk offline. We have the Mighty Networks community, which we'll talk more about later. And final comment before we move on was from Maura Castillo, which is to you, Mark. I don't know if you see it in the Zoom chat. Not so much a question, but a comment, which is she believes the biggest challenge is to change the mindset of people, especially there in Argentina, where meat consumption is the basis of diet. So how do you feel about this mindset factor of moving away from meat consumption? That's for you, Mark.
Yeah, for sure. At the end, the option makes sense when there is a motivation for that option. And there, I think that as a society, we have to raise awareness about the problem and why we have to be part of the solution. What I was talking about is the challenges of the industry itself and how the industry can accelerate that more people have an easier entry to the industry. So I think that if we make products that are amazing in taste, super nutritious, and even cheaper than meat, it will be super easy to make them the norm and the successors.
Makes complete sense. Absolutely, and it's good to see you're doing it.
Let's make it happen.
Exactly. Thank you, Ahmed and Mark. Any final comments?
Just to add on to what Mark said right there, for all alternative proteins, whatever we're working on to make a more sustainable and better food system for everyone, communication and being clear with the public and consumers about not just what the technology is and how it works, but why. Why are scientists, entrepreneurs, and researchers all around the world looking to these novel food technologies? That context matters. That matters a lot. And especially when it comes to our food decisions, people need to be clear on what they're doing and why. So I think communication with the public about the food choices is going to be important moving forward.
Excellent, makes complete sense. So we're going to hand over to Laurie now. Mark and Ahmed are on Mighty Networks. You can connect with them. They might also be around possibly later for the networking session. If you come up with more questions, just send them this way. Thank you both.